Alright everyone, I've started the recording. A quick introduction for the people listening. This is a PVE Roundtable. I try and hold these once every year, and what we're going to be doing is just going over some topics that are particularly pertinent to the current time, in the hopes of basically seeing where things went wrong, getting some on-the-ground perspectives, and kind of trying to figure out what could be improved. It's not meant as a CCP please, it's more meant as just an exploration of what PvE is like and what could be done in the future. As always, I'm going to go down and ask each person to introduce themselves. So, AJ Crendaman, do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Sure. I started playing EVE in about 2012, and for a couple of years I was doing all sorts of high-sec level 4s in PvE, including incursions. I became a FC for an incursions then. I recently moved to nullsec, but I still occasionally log in and talk with friends who run high-sec level 4s and that sort of thing.
Okay. Boytender Bob has his mic muted, but he's someone I know was a prevalent poster on the forum thread that we had. Don't worry, the text channel here will be being recorded as well, so you can introduce yourself there. Alongside that, we have Commander A's, who I know is a predominant member of the high-sec PvP community, and has run for the CSM in the past. I believe you're running again this year, correct?
That is correct. Background in high-sec incursions, high-sec level 4s, ran What Drifters when Drifter incursions were in high-sec, also ran the PvE wormhole What Drifters version several times as well. Then have moved to null since due to just wanting a change. So, but yes, I am running for CSM as well. So.
Okay, Elia too. Do you want to introduce yourself? You've also been very prevalent on the forums.
Yes, I started playing in 2006. Then I was leveling my Raven for most of the time, so for 5 years I was doing that. I was only flying Qadari up until 2011, when I started to, from overnight I went from leveling my Raven and doing level 4 missions to solo PvP, inspired by Kill2's and Corrix's podcast. I don't know if you remember that.
Bringing solo back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one.
That's a good one.
There's a forum thread in the forum archive. You can read all about it. In 2011, I was like really involved in that, and I was living in Null for several years, but I didn't like the chores I had to do all the time, and I liked it better when I had the small gang PvP kind of stuff, like 4 people, 5 people, or all on my own. But I had to move back to high-sec now, so.
Okay. I'm sure you all know me. I'm Jin'taan. I'm a CSM member. I kind of do a lot of this sort of communication stuff. I'm not particularly important here. I'm just to facilitate the meeting. Kainami, do you want to introduce yourself?
Mostly a high-sec day tripper into wormholes and flow on occasion, with a lot of missioning. I also chase around DEDs. Tried poking my head into the resource wars and found it to be pretty much a dead end real quick.
Mm-hmm. Moderator, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, I'm moderator. Running for CSM 13 this time around. Alliance tournament commentator for the last couple of years. In the context of PvE, my background would be primarily factional warfare, both of running the actual plexes and the level 4 missions there, running low-sec level 5s and subs, caps and supers, and a handful of null ratting and a little bit of high-sec when I was a new player, but not so much these days.
And finally, Sean Roach.
Mostly, I'm just listening in.
All right, wonderful. Well, we've got a nice list of topics. I will post the document again in the chat for everyone to take a look at. It's got the main questions there. But the first topic I want to kind of ask about is resource wars. It didn't really take off in the way it had been intended, and that was something that CCP kind of openly acknowledged, especially in the minutes that were released, where they said, well, you know, we're going to be moving on from resource wars very quickly because it didn't stick. And I'm kind of interested in finding out, you know, what are you guys' opinions on why did resource wars fail? And I mean, the first big obvious one is the what was it called? The reward structure. And I've had a lot of good suggestions, actually. One that was brought to me by a member of the role-playing community was the suggestion of having, say, faction mining crystals be part of the reward set for resource wars. And I was interested to hear what you guys would think of that. The idea of adding unique rewards other than just the skins to resource wars.
That would most certainly make them more interesting.
Mm-hmm. The general feeling I've got from this is that the content itself, as in the actual playing of the game, is pretty fun. But the problem is in the fact that the rewards are fucking terrible and no one does PvE for free.
Exactly.
There's one thing I'll add to that.
Go ahead.
And that is that the combat pods were annoyed because it was mostly all about either bringing in one lodge and keep the miners up or just bring in additional miners because the combat doesn't help. It might help if there was an optional objective for combat pods that chase within the site.
Okay, that's something interesting to keep in mind for future. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about resource wars, at least in general? I have a couple of specific things I want to talk about with regards to other things that I think resource wars failed in, but I'd be interested to hear you guys' kind of comments on it, if you haven't put those already in the thread.
Yeah, what Boytender said.
Okay, well, that actually brings me on to the second question, which is, what tools in is social PvE missing? Would being able to set up fleets properly so that you can actually work with people socially be helpful? Also, I guess to a degree, it's just because like high-sec corporation mechanics kind of suck, so it's hard to get into a corporation where you can actually trust people, because I find that corporations tend to be where trust is found in EVE Online. You trust the people who you know.
Exactly.
And, yeah. That's an entirely another topic, and whilst I know Commander A's could sit here and talk for hours about it, and so could Black Pedro and a couple other people here, I don't want to make this another War Deck Roundtable, because the last time I had one of those, it went for 4.5 hours, and I wanted to fucking kill myself.
Oh god.
I mean, it was really useful, but holy shit, I can't deal with 4 hours of talking about War Decks.
Yeah, I've been doing that for years. The conversation's getting a little stale at this point.
Yeah. But seriously though, can you guys think of anything that would improve the social PvE experience? Even if it's things like incursions, I'd be really interested in seeing what we can do to make that kind of content more understandable and engageable for newer players. As being social is a big part of EVE, especially for me personally. And bringing that to new players seems beneficial.
I would like to say what I like about incursions is that you get this constellation chat, and there's constant talk. Like I have a basilisk. Which fleet can I join? And you get a fleet invite, and you're getting told go to this system and join a fleet up with those, and join the basilisk wing or Logi the scimitars.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
When an incursion spawns, there's the entire constellation of that incursion, and he's saying that that's a way for newer people an easy way for newer people to join up.
Oh, so having fleets be able to be advertised, say, by constellation?
Well, So right now,
Maybe not.
as it stands, people just add in, it's this added channel that pops up if you're in that area.
Hmm.
So they just spam it like, hey, the Tanian fleet is recruiting people. Here's the information to get a hold of us if you want to run incursions with us. Makes it a lot easier to run sites together and build a community because you have that large scale base of people that are in one area doing one thing that might be looking for another community to join.
I understand that. I'm trying to understand what could be done to improve that, which is what I'm trying to find here.
Probably breaking up the current resource wars channel that's a single channel for the entire game into probably 4 channels for each empire, so that you actually have something within 12 jumps or something rather than 20 plus on occasion.
That's a good suggestion. I'll note that one. There's just, and like I said, this doesn't just have to be with resource wars. This can be any kind of social PvE. I'm really interested in finding out. And I know C2B is kind of interested in finding out what they can do to facilitate this.
From the perspective of incursions, I can say the scout sites are, frankly, they're a little too difficult. Nobody.
They're harder than vanguards. They're harder than vanguards.
Yeah, because they spawn with multiple. I think their Maras are the ones that repair.
Yep.
Yeah.
They
They can also spawn the fighter
really do
bombers,
anything.
can't they?
Yeah, and theoretically, you should be able to go in a couple of Marauders and do pretty well, but you can't. You can't put enough on grid to make the risk versus reward anywhere near the correct balance.
Yeah, when alphas came out, I actually had a very long written proposal that I presented to CCP that was about making scout sites the alpha version of incursions, basically, so that you could do them in like cruisers, T1 cruisers and stuff. Unfortunately, it would have taken a lot of work, and also they had other plans for alphas, so that didn't go through.
And
but
you can
I'd be
do
interested in hearing what you
Vanguard
guys think about.
sites and alpha ships.
Yeah, but this was back when they could only use T1 cruisers.
But you can do Vanguards and T1 cruisers.
Can you?
Yes.
Alright. Learn something new every day. I've only ever done the fucking, 8 Apocalypse Navy issues, 2 Guardians, and a Loki meme, so...
It's not fast. It's not fast, but you can do it.
Okay, that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we used to do that, bring a new player in that was new to the Corp or new to the Alliance and go and say, hey, come fly with us, we'll give you a Bellicose or something to web stuff down and help us out with. And they'd make more money than they know what to do with.
That's actually something we've been doing in Goonswarm. We've started up, well, not recently, but a while back, we started up an Alpha Doctrine. Well, technically it was a newbie doctrine, and then we turned it into Alpha after the changes came out. And basically, people can taxi scepter or taxi frigate over. We'll literally hand them a frigate or a cruiser for free. And they can come have fun, learn the mechanics, and get paid for it. And next thing we know, next focus, they might show up with a battleship or even a carrier, depending on how active they were. But yeah, the changes definitely made it a little easier for us to get people in, rather than just waiting for them to train. Rather than saying, here's a ship and a skill queue. Come back when you have it. We can just say, oh yeah, just train this whenever you can, and here, have a free ship. Come out, have fun.
Okay. Before I move on, go ahead.
Cast Combat Day has been doing that pretty much the same thing as well, and it's worked pretty well.
Before I move on, I would like to ask if there are any kind of dissenting or other big reasons why you guys think Resource Wars failed. Is there anything other than the reward structure you think got in the way here, and the lack of social tools for PvE?
Frankly, it was a little
I'll be
boring.
honest, I didn't give it a chance.
Why didn't you give it a chance?
At the time, I was hanging around in Null with, in RF, and I had the preconception that I would have to ruin some faction with some people, with some groups that I didn't want to ruin faction, and I really just didn't care enough to check to see if that was true.
Okay.
I'll concur with the travel times being part of it, because if you're only able to do the lower sites and you're having to move 5 jumps and it might be completed by the time you get there, you're going to be a little irked.
So perhaps if the Resource Wars sites were all concentrated in, say, one constellation for each empire, and there was a chat for that, it would have been a lot easier for it to get started. Something along those lines.
Definitely, yes.
Wonder if it also wouldn't help if like there was a main, you did a site. Like I admittedly I didn't do Resource Wars, but if they, you did a site and then it escalated sort of, and that, yeah, you might get a thing 5 jumps out, but also nobody else would be able to warp to it until you initiated warp. Like I said, I didn't do too much Resource Wars. I only really read about it on the forums, and I was in nullsec, so I couldn't really run back to highsec for that one.
Okay. The one final thing I have to ask, and this is a bit more of a philosophical question, I guess, as opposed to an actual problem, because Resource Wars never took off. And that's, do you think that the instancing of Resource Wars would have become an issue over time if it was a profitable activity? I know I personally was very, very concerned about this when I heard about Resource Wars initially, although the initial plan for instancing was a lot harsher. And I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts are on how that worked out, and if it still feels like an EVE kind of mechanic to have a limit of how many people can enter a site.
I don't think that was the problem. I mean, I tried them on CC when they came out, and I was only allowed to fly the Venture, and I was hoping to fly the Endurance because I like the Endurance better. But I couldn't do the level 2.
I'm not talking about the ship restrictions here.
Okay.
I'm talking about the fact that only a certain number of people can enter the site, so you can't disrupt someone's activities within it. That's something that I was kind of concerned about, because I felt that if we didn't know what the reward structure was going to be until very, very late in development in this, and I was thinking like, oh man, if this is level 4 money and you can't gank people inside them, that's bad. But I'd be really interested to find out what you guys thought about that. Say Resource Wars was a success and it was something lots of people were running, would the instancing be a problem? Just from a design perspective of how the game should be, of how EVE Online should be.
The only thing I really noticed during the first 3 days before everyone pretty much washed their hands of it was that you could get locked out simply because there was enough people wandering in that you would have to look for another site, and then another site, and then another site. But after the first 2 days, that was no longer an issue.
I think you have, if you're trying to coach newer players to join up with groups, you have to have a little bit of a safety net to encourage them to take that step forward outside from playing solo. Okay.
Well, if you guys have any thoughts on that, let me know, because it's something that I'm very interested about. As it was a topic that I found very interesting, and it was one that we put a lot of time in thinking about, because it's going to a space that EVE Online hasn't been to before, and I was very concerned about that being a slippery slope. And in fact, there was a very large amount of concern about it on the forums, if I'm remembering the time correctly. I know I got into a couple of arguments with, I think I got in an argument with you, actually, Black Pedro, about it. Anyway, let's move on and talk about the agency a little bit. How useful do you guys think the agency is? I know we've talked a little bit about the agent finder, and there's been some really good points that the agency is missing. I really wish I could get like a list by list of here is everything the agent finder did that the agency doesn't, so that I could actually send that to CCP. But I'm sure I'll get there eventually. But how do you guys actually find the agency as a piece of content finding itself? Or do you not use it?
It's not that great, to be honest, because, among other things, you can't filter by security status of systems.
Okay. Chintz, or if you're keying up, but nothing's coming out of your mic, you need to check your mic.
Does that work?
That's better.
I was just going to say, yeah, a few filters would go a long way to making it more usable.
The switch CCP did to the agency unfortunately messed with incursions a little bit. Unfortunately, we're no longer able to see how much LP we have pooled up from running, a couple days. We have to manually add it all up, and that came about at the exact same time the agency came in. Like, all the incursion stuff got moved over. We can't really see. There used to be like info on which sites were which. Like, there'd be a little bar and a little description, little blurb, and talking about the payouts and the number of people on grid. And unfortunately, that's gone. And that was really helpful. Like, we could point people to that and say, yeah, take a look at this. And there's a few communities that'll do each one. So if you want to do this, there's this community. If you want to do something lighter like the Vanguards, there's this community. Unfortunately, now that it's gone, we have to rely on outdated sources.
And the map doesn't really belong there because you have a map. I mean,
Okay.
Not to mention the standard map doesn't eat resources the same way that piece of non-functional eye candy does.
Righty-ho. Is there anything you guys can think of to improve it? Or, there's a couple of little things there, but is there anything else you guys want to say about it? I know I personally don't use it, so...
Bring back everything it's replaced, but make it link to them. I mean, as a way to find it, it's great, but when it takes over the functions of the other things which were more developed, that's where the problem lies.
I think that's a very salient point there.
And I think the other problem is a lot of us here are probably established in doing things, and we don't need to really use it a whole lot either. So we just kind of look at it and go, whatever.
Yeah, I think we're kind of predisposed to miss the more advanced features of stuff like the agent finder in the first place as well.
Plus, we'll go outside the game and look at forums or Reddit or whatever our alliance group says and run those activities because we know what to expect from them.
Mm-hmm.
Or look up like the trucker agent database and just completely sidestep the issue because you're looking at out-of-game content.
Right. Does anyone here have any experience with the NPC forward operating bases or soy toyos?
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, I asked a lot of questions in that thing, but I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts on them in general. Like, let's lay it on me.
For the Sortillo, it was a great idea and concept. Unfortunately, both CCP and our actions, it's turned into something that only really the elite can do or will do. I've always been opposed to them just because it seems like a shit way to get the blueprints for the faction caps, and the price has been really ridiculous. The level of entries pretty much get a Titan or else. And it's the same thing that we saw with the Drifter incursions, where people didn't really want to do sites or do activities where they're guaranteed to lose ships. It's not something that the average person wants to go through. Going through, like, not even talking reimbursement. Some people, my ship survived this, that, and the other thing, and now I just threw it away because of these rats. So I wish CCP would keep, I don't mind if they keep the Sotillos, but I wish that they'd take the blueprints and put the faction cap blueprints in LP stores at a reasonable markup or something.
I'm fairly sure that's an inevitability given a long enough time. I mean, it happened already to the Serpentis capitals, if I'm correct.
It did, but currently you can buy 2 Titans fitted out completely for the price of building the Serpentis Vendetta, the super carrier, and that's...
Which has always been the intent.
It's been the intent, but like I said, it's not something that it's healthy or good, in my opinion.
From CCP's perspective, they don't want to get into the same situation they got into with the Macarial, where they were like, where, you know, the Macarial just became affordable enough that everyone could use them, and then it just became the best. Like, CCP doesn't want to live in a world where everyone has a fucking vendetta doctrine, because that sounds fucking atrocious and impossible to balance.
The Macarial became the king because of void bombs and no other reason.
Incorrect. Entirely incorrect. You do not understand doctrine design.
Yeah.
It's mostly ease of getting it, low cost for high reward, plus all sorts of other different factors.
It was also the most agile battleship. It was the battleship with the strongest utility with an armor tank that could also use alpha. The fact that alpha was really important was key to it. Yes, the lack of cap dependency was important, but it was also that it ideally designed to not only use the best forces at the time, which are the Apostle and the Narazu, which reduced your dependence on subcap logistics, but also then to break the tank of opposing battleships more effectively, because you are an alpha platform. And that means that you can't really use anything other than a Maelstrom to fight them effectively. You know, you can't sit there and try and DPS them down, because they will just start volleying you, and a fax will effectively eliminate your DPS advantage over time. They'll lose critical mass far, far slower than you will. Anyway, moving on. Any other thoughts on, like, Soy Toyos before we talk a little bit about the FOBs?
So
Yeah,
this might have been... Sorry, I'll let you go.
I'm sorry about that. I found one on CC 3 weeks ago, and went there with two buddies, and we thought, okay, let's take some dreads and let's go kill some Goristas and take the blueprint. And we walked there, went into siege, and poof, we had three dead dreadnoughts, and we thought, okay, let's not do that again.
So you didn't prepare properly for a site and test it, and you got shit on?
Didn't prepare. I mean, we had like 89% thermal resist, and there were like a billion NPCs on grid, and they just vaporized us in 2 seconds.
That's why the current flavor of the month meta is Titans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think
very unfriendly to many groups.
I'm not of the opinion that you should be able to do a Garistas Soitoyo with 3 dreads, personally, but, you know, I don't know. Like, we've always asked for like, ultra high-end stuff.
I don't know if this is confirmed. Are they regionally locking, like, based on where the NPCs of that type spawn, or are they... I heard from somebody that they were spawning sites outside of where the traditional NPC spawns were.
They're spawning them outside because of that when Mittani declared that we weren't going to be running them at all, CCP panicked and started spawning them everywhere. Because the blueprint, because that was before when the blueprint wasn't in a lockbox, so you could just warp in and interceptor, steal it, and run out. That blueprint thing is an argument for another time, but that's basically what happened.
Yeah, I think that's that could be a factor in influencing groups to go to war with each other. Because if you just have to wait for it to spawn in your area, then there's no real benefit to pushing into some other space.
No benefit anyway, if only a handful of people are ever going to be able to get it.
Mm-hmm. Joker Quinn's there talking a little bit about the FOBs in chat, so probably going to move the topic onto that. You know, what are you guys' experiences with the forward operating bases? They were being run a fair amount previously, but they've kind of stopped being run lately, from what I understand. You know, why is that? You know, how is the reward structure? What could be done to make them more popular without making them easier, perhaps? You know, or maybe do they need to be made easier? I'm interested in hearing you guys' thoughts on all of these questions, really.
Honestly, the most dangerous thing about having the FOB isn't the FOB defenses anymore. It's the damn minor defense fleet.
Can you elaborate on that at all?
Because when the FOB is in system, you'll have the Blood Raider miners and haulers. The haulers can actually hit up some of the NPC stations for drop-offs, meaning you can actually end up with a minor defense fleet drop on your head near an NPC station in system.
Okay, and what are the consequences of that?
Scrams, webs, the whole 9 yards, because it's a minor defense fleet.
And I'm assuming that does not end well for your fleet.
It doesn't end well for most players now.
Okay. So what would you like to see changed there, in your opinion? Sorry, did that come through? What would you like to see changed there, in your opinion?
Probably if it's a case of the minor defense fleets being in system, they probably need a warning and giving someone a little bit of time to actually get out before it lands, because you only have about 6 to 7 seconds usually before that thing lands if you're getting it dropped on you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that actually reminds me of something I've heard about the Soitoyos in nullsec. I've heard that they can actually set up kind of like almost gate camps, and they're actually kind of hard to get past. Do you guys have any experience with that?
Yeah, you can drag them to a gate, and it causes all sorts of hilarity.
Can you elaborate on that some more? I'm really interested in finding out, why you would do that, and what the purpose is of setting up an NPCs to gate camp for you is.
It's really nice while you're running the site, because you can just force the NPCs to guard the gates for you.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
It's entirely broken because they'll scram and everything, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I've kind of brought that up to CCP before. Does anyone have like the roaming perspective on what it's like to run into one of those camps on a day-to-day basis? Can you just get past them, or are they really a pain in the ass?
Well, in HiSec, I know that they're taking out ships, just the roving patrol squad, the 4 ships.
Roving patrol actually isn't that bad. Most of the people they're nailing are the ones who are on autopilot or have undertanked their ships, unless you're something like a Venture, in which case you're just dead anyways.
Agreed. I think it's kind of funny. It's another way to watch out for it, but still, first time it happened to people, it's pretty good listening to comms.
Oh yeah, it's always fun to see somebody screaming an intel about being tackled by a whole bunch of rats.
Okay. Do you guys have anything more to say about FOBs then? I've kind of heard that the rewards aren't particularly good, especially for the FOBs in HiSec. Can anyone talk to that effect?
Drops, most of what you're going to only be getting is like things like the newts, a couple webs. You have a very, very small chance for anything actually good. And frankly, there's no bounties on the defense fleet you're working through with remote reps. So
you can actually blame the CSM
is,
for that, unfortunately, the lack of bounties. Because we realized very quickly that if you put bounties on them, you would be able to infinitely spawn them and just bomb them.
Well, actually, they put a cap on the defense fleet, so they stopped spawning after a while with the incarnation anyways.
Yeah, that wasn't considered possible at the time, unfortunately. So, sorry team, fucked it up.
To sum up interactions with them in LowSec, I run them because they are irritating when they exist, not because I actually want to run them. And even then, I only run them because I can warp a super in. Like, they're just not worth the time at all.
Can you define annoying to exist? Can you define in what way they interact with you?
They will They have reinforced citadels. They have caught random crap on gate. They're just a nuisance. That's the only reason they get ran, in my experience of everyone I've talked to that has ran them.
So it kind of
Yep.
sounds like why you'd bash a player citadel. Hey, Lamau.
Yeah, pretty much the main reason they are getting run is simply so you don't get the minor defense leads dropped on your head. That's really the only reason to run them.
And the
All right.
one strange person who has figured out a Nighthawk fit that can solo them. That takes like 40 minutes per FOB.
Interesting. Using a fucking Nighthawk, wow. The most useless ship in the game.
It only works because the Garista's FOB caps itself out.
Seems good. Any final comments here? Oh, actually, the looting mechanics. How are the looting mechanics? I know those used to be a very, very big problem right at the start when we had Soitoyos and FOBs first introduced. How are people finding them now, especially in high sec? For the kind of reward that you get. You know, are the people who actually run the site getting the reward most of the time?
As long as you have a DST to pick up the station modules, basically.
Okay, that's good to hear, because we were really concerned that would be an issue. Anyone have anything more to say before I move on to missions? Take that silence as a no. So I've talked kind of previously about adding more missions to the mission pool, but I've always been kind of interested in finding out if you guys think that there are any changes to the mission structures that you think would be good. What are the good missions, basically? What are the missions that made you really have fun when you were a newer player?
I'll be honest. When it's time for a mission, I don't. I basically look up the name to find out what to fit.
Okay.
I rarely read the text anymore. If it were random, or you could pretty much generate the offensive fleet more randomly, and I think it'd be better.
Yeah, a bit more randomization in the spawns where you can't just toss something on and go AFK. Like occasionally, like have wed spawn or something like that. Have curveball, just have something that people can't just put. They can't put a cookie cutter ship and go AFK. Like they have to pay attention for something, I guess.
Complete
You
lack
see-
of entropy.
You guys say that, but then again, but if we go back and we look at the thread about this whole roundtable, we'll see that there's like a very, very strong voice of like 10 people who are like, fucking do not change how missions work, I will kill you.
Well, there's two main camps you got to address. One is going to be the PvP players just trying to earn money in PvE, and they want to do it as fast and quick and as painless as possible. And then you have the PvE players, and that's their main enjoyment in EVE is to run missions or explore, and they've been kind of abandoned for about 10 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, I would expect the people who are very, very into PvE to want to have more variation and challenges, but they do not seem to do that. From my experience in that thread, they're talking about wanting to have predictable, the same content. They don't want to lose their mastery of it. They feel like they've gotten to a point where they understand everything and they want it to stay understood.
My read of some of that was they don't want to be forced into basically incursion light. I mean, having the mission where you have to fly something which makes you a little more resistant to a PvP drop is probably not the issue, but when those suggestions pop up, the counter argument is always, don't make us pretend like we're doing PvP.
I don't know what to say to that. I mean, most of the people I've talked to that are in PvE, they would love variety They love exploring, shoot this system or station, try a different fit. That's what gives them enjoyment.
I think it's that the people that take part in PvE are so diverse in where they come from and what they want from PvE. You have people that, just want the same experience over and over and over again, so they don't need to put thought into it whatsoever. You've got people that want it to be the same over and over and over and over again so that they can refine every single aspect of it and try get the best ISK per hour. You've got people that want it to be a bit more random and, change things up so they have to pay attention. You're not going to satisfy everyone when it comes to behavior.
But I think you could keep all the old, missions that everyone knows by heart and then introduce some new ones and keep a ratio of, I don't know, 50% old, 25% new, or 40% new, or something around there to make everyone happy.
I think it comes into very similar on why like nullsec anomalies are run as frequently as they are. And I don't think it's just because they're that valuable. I think it's because they can be easily done and gamed for the absolute min-max. So and I think you have two different crowds. The crowd that's looking for a challenge on each different site, and the challenge is trying to make the most possible amount of ISK. Because I know I've had guys in the past that have come to me and said, man, it would be really great if we could just select from a list of missions that we're willing to accept so that we can repeat those over and over and over again. Because everybody wants to run Angel's Extravaganza over and over again, or Gone Berserk, or, what's the one with the Sancha Gate? Scarlet would be another one. Those kind of ones, they want to be able to run them over and over again because they're significantly more valuable than like Massive Assault, which is anything but. And I think it comes into play when it's like, you get these missions, you don't know exactly what they are, you run them and you're like, man, that mission sucked because it had like no battleships in it. Or, it just wasn't worth running. I do think that it could, I think that missions pose kind of that entry to team, building a team towards incursions, because I know that's what I used to do with my new guys. We'd bring them in, have them run level 4s with us in smaller ships. That way they got used to getting attacked, and then bring them into an incursion, make them serious money. But the problem was, you warp into the site, it's the same site over and over again, doesn't scale up no matter how many people you throw in there. So you throw in 15 battleships, you're just going to burn through the site super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you throw into 15 battleships, unless you're in nullsec, then you start losing payout, which is a decent balancing factor. I remember back in 2014, 2015, CCP was announcing they were working on some new thing, like that was supposed to make it easier to add missions. Whatever happened to that?
It turns out it's really fucking hard to make new tools to add missions. I believe at that, I wasn't involved with CCP directly at that time, but from kind of discussing this, I believe the original intent was something along the lines of giving the players mission creation tools, and then they realized that holy fucking shit, that just doesn't work.
I've been in 2 games that gave players mission tools, and they were gamed terribly.
Yeah. So Joker actually brings up an interesting point in the chat there, talking about the new types of PvE with the fancy AI, and then the tension that has against. I've actually taken to calling the old PvE militia PvE, and the new PvE just PvE, because they use completely different AI and they have a different kind of difficulty structure. But would you guys prefer to see more of this new PvE, or would you prefer to see more iteration and new missions? So using the older PvE AI.
Yes and no.
That's not an answer. It's a priority question. Which would you prefer?
I think
it really depends on what you're talking about.
Well,
working well first.
Would you prefer? Okay, so let's just say, I'll give you a hypothetical example then. Let's say CCP has 3 months and they're going to spend 3 months on PvE. Would you rather they come up with some sort of new PvE opportunity in the same vein as like resource wars and FOBs, but they give a lot more thought to it. They make sure that they have the reward structure down, and they try and bring the good parts of that into it? Or would you rather they spend 3 months, creating new missions, reworking that whole structure, taking out any bugs they could find, doing stuff like that?
See, the optimistic side of me says with the new AI, the part of me that has experienced CCP for the past 12 years says old AI.
It doesn't work that way, Jocker. Like, I know it's going to take them roughly 3 months to do anything, just because of how CCP functions. You can't split the dev teams in that way. It's not functional. You need a combination of different developers to do stuff in CCP, and they don't have. Well, they do have 2 PvE teams, I guess. They have Team Event Horizon and Team Phenomenon. But I'm pretty sure you guys enjoy the occasional event, so you're not going to ask me to kill off Team Event Horizon for that.
Well, we know missions work, and we know which missions everyone likes. I think if you could go and
No, we
create new
don't.
missions,
We 100% do not know which missions everyone likes, which is why I asked, which missions does everyone like and why? And then I got every fucking mission suggested to me, which was great.
And there's some very different camps, although I think there are some that are generally unliked, which, like, I think someone mentioned earlier, like Massive Attack, were just kind of a waste of your time no matter what.
Yeah, like, you guys are saying this like, oh, everyone knows what everyone likes, and no, they don't. It's really fucking hard to figure out what PvE players like, because PvE players like a lot of different things.
There's big missions with the full clears, and then others that are blitzing and doing burners. So that's some very different camps.
Yeah, like I've had people say that burners were the worst thing that's ever been introduced to the game, and I've had people say that burners are the best thing that's ever been introduced to the
Definitely
game.
the best.
Like, I can't win. I can't fucking win, alright?
If you split the agents so that you had specifically burner agents and regular agents, that would give some flexibility.
The problem with that is that then you just get to blitz burner missions, and suddenly, oops, LP is worth nothing.
Do that already.
I know you can do that already, but it becomes insanely easier to do it.
And you can also decline all of the normal missions as well. Or
Yeah.
you can decline the burner missions without penalty.
Yeah.
Jin'taan, you seriously underestimate how much we've been doing in Garista space for these burner missions.
Alright, fair enough.
Yeah, they've gone insane with it.
We're the reason that Garista LP is bottoming out and why the Gila is so cheap.
Nice.
Really, that's something I suggested on the thread earlier. If the missions were basically tallied and the value was inversely proportional to how many times that mission had been completed, a mission would get more valuable the fewer people did it until it reached a equilibrium.
I get that, but then that opens up the opportunity for some entity like Swarm, for example, saying, alright, everyone's going to run missions in teams of 5, and we're going to make it so that level 4 missions make no money ever, and fuck everyone in HiSec. Because I know Aerith would 100% do that if that became a system.
I think the only missions where you're going to find near 100% consensus as to people disliking them are some of the level 5 missions, which are automatically declined because they cannot be blitzed by a carrier.
Okay, interesting.
There's also one that, if you give me a second to get somewhere that I'm not going to die in my game, I'll get you the name of.
No worries, dude. I guess maybe at some point I should have like a, what's the top 5 missions you like, not for the payout, but for like actually enjoying doing the missions and try and get an
absolute
aggregate that way.
instant decline is named. Where is it? It's on this bloody list somewhere.
Smash the supplier.
That's an easy blitz.
No, Prison Break. It involves killing something like 300 battleships to finish the mission.
Oh, and sorry, you're talking about 5s, my bad.
Takes
either
like
that or-
and walk through like 7 different rooms as well to do
Or
it.
destroy like any of the Caldari carriers or a Mar carrier, depending on what faction you're doing it. And then there's Wrath of Angels, or there's one angel mission where you either have to just destroy a lab and it's over in a couple minutes. You have to clear through multiple waves of ships, and it takes in a carrier upwards of 30 minutes. no one does it.
Okay. Well, I didn't really get an answer to my initial question, but this has been a very interesting topic nonetheless. Thank you.
I think that speaks a lot to the type of people that run level 5s, who, in my experience, is without fail the people that are just running to be as fast as they can and make money.
Yeah. Does anyone have any actual thoughts on, like, I'm seeing there's like a slight preference towards missions being something CCP should be focusing on next, basically, over new features, which kind of jives with me. I personally would like to see that happen, but does anyone have any dissenting options?
I mean, you add some new missions and spend the time to make them, and people are just going to figure them out, and that's that. It's not really all that interesting. Where if they actually got the new NPCs working well, it seems like they could make new content with that easier.
From
forward.
a technical perspective, what kind of design debt does that create for CCP a few years down the road if they want to convert over to this newer AI system and they've got a bunch of older missions that they might not want to have running under a certain set of AI?
I don't know if they'll ever convert the current mission system to new AI. I think the intent would probably be to create a new mission system that just uses that AI and have that be a different
Whatever
thing.
you do, don't take the level 1 and level 2 missions and make them new AI.
Noted. Yeah, I don't really
Same
know
with
what CCP's
nullsec
long-term plans are with this AI. I just know that, and even if I did, I couldn't tell you, I guess. So, yeah. Does anyone have any further thoughts on missions? Are there any like little bugs or stuff that we could mention here? Any pet peeves, etc., etc.?
Is the generator off the table then, you would say?
A generator? Question mark.
Yeah,
The player
mission
generator.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that will never ever happen. It's too gameable.
EverQuest 2 did player-created dungeons. People just made grinding dungeons that were easy to walk through. Anarchy Online had a mission creator system. They took it out when they launched the game. They took it out before the year was up. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't mean that the players would have access to it, but the computer AI would generate it for you.
Oh,
yeah, randomly generated missions would be great, assuming that the payout was worth it.
Oh my god. It's something we can talk about to CCP, but I don't think that they would like to try and do procedurally generated missions. I know it's been something they've thought about before, but they aren't sure how they could do it and have it be enjoyable, I think, is the problem. We did actually talk about this kind of when we were talking about the original version of the new AI, where we were like, oh, and if it kills a player, it should be able to loot their like bodies and put the items on the ships. So like you'd end up with this AI character that just somehow managed to get a hold of like faction damage mods and MWDs and stuff like that, and was zipping all over the place, being hilariously overpowered. We thought that was a hilarious idea.
I more see it as something where you would have someone like Code just get a few greens and whatnot, and just make a donation to the local NPCs just to see how much salt they can get.
I personally would love that, but that's because I'm a cruel motherfucker. But yeah, I don't think we'll see procedurally generated missions be a thing soon. But it's it's something to think about, I guess.
Something which would make missions just a tad bit harder is if you just took the labels off of them and made people show up at the mission to find out what they were facing.
I saw that that was a suggestion in the thread actually, and the argument there was that it just makes doing mission running more annoying, because now you've got to go there, you've got to find out what the mission is in like a frigate or something, then come back, fit your ship up, go out and do it again. Why not just give that information straight away?
That's difficulty via inconvenience.
Yeah, difficulty via inconvenience, not actual difficulty. All right. So anyone have any final thoughts on missions before we move on to the final topic?
I did remember one pet peeve of mine. When I'm doing missions, it's usually high sec, and I'm usually grinding faction, but I do get somewhat annoyed when a mission takes me out of high sec into low. Especially when the very next one after I refuse that one also takes me to low.
Yep, I've gotten refused chains up to like 4 or 5 long occasionally.
Yeah, like if you're taking stuff from an agent in high sec, odds are you want to run the high sec mission. You're not going to accept a low sec mission anyways. So just locking those missions only to high sec would be very beneficial. Or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
The only main thing I could see being a problem is that would make everyone and their cousin be pulling from 0.5 security systems for the increased pay. That's about the only thing that really results from completely locking it to high sec.
Yeah, like if you're playing somewhere that can give level low sec missions, like that's one of the downsides of using a better agent. It can give you low sec missions. Being able to block it would just make that agent like unobjectively better than all the other agents.
I mean, there's already pretty much objectively better agents than other agents, so being able to actually spread out and make a few more agents viable sounds like a good thing to me.
Yeah, because most of the ones you really want are hidden in 0.6 and 0.7 systems at the little old cul-de-sacs that can't hit low anyways.
Or Lingassi, where everything spawns in Constellation, pretty much no matter what, and a max of 2 jumps away.
So would faction warfare missions be something that would inevitably get hit in the same pass, or where would CCP generally be approaching this from?
Oh, that's an interesting topic, actually. I didn't think about that. Faction warfare missions. I probably should have talked about this. Actually, I did talk about this in the faction warfare thing, but I'd be interested in hearing if there are any faction warfare mission specific stuff you could bring to the table here, Maud.
Regarding what avenue would it
just are there any problems with them? How do you think they fit into the overall PvE landscape right now? And anyone else can chime in as well.
Well, the situation that you have now is more or less the same thing that's been going on ever since Inferno, when faction warfare was last introduced, or was last really iterated on. Minus the fact that some of the missions were changed such that you couldn't run some of them in stealth bombers, or it was made much more difficult to run them in bombers because people were doing some kind of gamey blitzing, which was making a bit too much money. But in terms of the actual missions themselves, mostly what's going on, and I'm sure you're aware of this to an extent, is that when one faction goes rather high on their faction control of the war zone, you have farmers who switch over to one side and will run missions for one faction, and then after a certain amount of time, when the LP value becomes deprecated a bit, they'll switch over to the opposite faction and continue to run the same level 4s against the faction that they were just operating for. And this is incredibly profitable.
Do you see that as a problem?
I'm not sure that there's any easy way to design around that. People are inherently going to do whatever. And the people who are typically running these level 5 missions are in the camp of players who are trying to optimize the most ISK per hour and aren't necessarily there for the mission content themselves. But I know a few people who do genuinely enjoy running the missions for the content inherently inside the mission.
All right. Well, let's quickly move on there, unless anyone else has anything to say, and talk about incursions a little bit. What problems are there with incursions? Do people feel like they are figured out, kind of like missions, and kind of the big question for me, which is one that was a lot bigger of a problem, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. It's less of an issue now. Is does the ISK from high-sec incursions make other PvE options less attractive because it's just so much better than anything else? They've been nerfed a little bit since then, but I'd be interested in hearing either way.
Scout sites.
Yeah, scout sites.
I don't know that it nerfs I don't know that it makes the other income opportunities any less valuable, because they all kind of build towards that, and it becomes an aspect of, do I want to do something myself, or do I want to do something in a group? And depending on the group that you join, it can be a good experience, or you can hate life and want to claw your ears out.
TBH, I want to do that all day, but anyway.
Yeah.
We did join Test.
Ooh.
He's not wrong.
Anybody got nanite paste?
No, I'm just going to leave that one alone. I'm not going to dig myself a hole because I'm not making this a political one. Let's keep fucking going. All right.
A few, 2, 3 major things that I had written down. Well, first being one of them was the LP pool, which we discussed with the agency. The 2 other things are directly incursion related. The last is sort of just a general thing. First, on the in gate of every incursion, there's a little beacon thing, which I'm sure is how CCP tells their acceleration gate where to warp to. Unfortunately, it has mass and it has presence. It's not just a flashing light. So unfortunately, running incursions, we occasionally get people who are trying to anchor up or approach whoever, and they're just bouncing off this little flashing beacon that 99% of us don't have on our overviews. It'd be awesome if that could be changed, but it's sort of like one of those not as important things.
So in high sec, that little beacon is not that big of an issue, but when you're trying to align faxes, dreads, supers, titans down a gate, that is an entirely different story when a titan takes a bounce off of one of these tiny little beacons.
This also stands true for level 5s as well, and that these beacons are interactable there, and you can get supers stuck in them.
Yeah, I meant I didn't want to be, I'm just only going for caps, but I mean, as he said, it's not as important in high sec, but it does occasionally happen.
Imperium member BTW.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obnoxious, even as people were saying in low-sec incursions, on the rare occasion that we gank people running them, and that you get caught on, say, like a beacon on the fortress or whatever mission in level 5.
Yeah, it's one thing to be caught out, if you mess up. It's another to be caught out because of that stupid little beacon, and it really is annoying.
I feel like that's a pretty easy, small thing to fix. Although, not being intricately familiar with the code itself, I feel like that should be something
on wrecks and corpses, so they took that away.
Yeah, well. The other small thing is the signature radius on the battle tower in the TCRC and the TPPH is abysmally small for something of its size. If we could get that bumped up, that'd be awesome. I think it's like something around 500 right now, like 1,000, maybe 2,000 would be great, but it's just way too small for its model size and just in general.
Okay. So other than Vanguards and HQs, how we've talked about how scout sites are bad, but how are assaults? How are those sites? Are they good? Are they bad? Do they fill a niche? Are they being run? That kind of thing.
You can solo them in a Marauder.
Okay.
Very shiny Marauder, but yes. After CCP fixed NCN walling, I don't have too many complaints about him. We do occasionally run them, both low sec and null sec. So it is an interesting change from HQs because the layouts are slightly different and not many people run them.
All right, well, that's kind of all my questions. As such, we're going to just give it an open floor now. If people have anything they would like to talk about, anything they want to get up their soapbox on, now's the time.
Yeah, yes, wormhole PVE.
I don't know wormhole PvE. I normally leave that to the wormhole candidate.
One little incursion thing, quick. I think looking at like the LP stores, how many are serviced by incursion runners versus mission runners? So I know there's a few corps with very good LP stores, but very good agents. I'm wondering if it's more incursion runners converting LP there, or if there's a few people actually running those missions.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off in terms of like wormhole PvE, but I don't know wormholes, so I always leave that to the wormhole candidates to deal with. It doesn't make sense for me to try and apply my knowledge there, unfortunately.
That's fine. We can talk about LP stores. We can talk about LP stores because that's really important, because some have like super LP stores like the SOE one, the Sisters of Eve, and some have like really crappy ones which have like some implants and nothing else.
Sure. So what? Yeah, we've talked about the Interbus LP store, I think, once before, but or the fact that they don't have one. What would you like to see done about that?
I would like to see some of the items you get from the LP store, like the Kadari Navy ballistic control, for example. You have to get some tags for some Galante tags, some Minimatar tags, and I would like to not have to like farm those tags to get those mods, because it's a gigantic ISK sync, which is good for the game.
So you're thinking of increasing the ISK costs for that as an alternative?
Yeah. I mean, increase the price for the Kadari Navy ballistic control to 150 million and some 100,000 LP, but remove the tags.
That'd be interesting.
Or both.
There's also some people making a lot of money farming tags now, though.
Still, for the life of me, I still haven't figured out how people actually do that.
Faction guns are probably going to be slightly more useful in the future anyway. Once we finally get weapon tier side in the year 20XX, when all of the bombs in Eve are finished.
Oh yes, please.
Well, the ability to use T2 lasers is going to mean a lot for alpha clones and lesser skilled people.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be a nice change coming up. The minor thing, sort of PV, sort of not. Faction FOF missiles. Can you please ask Fuzzy to bring them back to the LB store?
Yes, please.
Yes.
That's unironically a decent thing. You stick them on an Onyx and you go hug a Rape or a Falcon, and you can DPS them down.
And they're so useful otherwise in all kinds of PvE or PvP.
Here's something I'd kind of like to be able to do. I'd like to be able to target my own drones insta-lock, even if I can't target anything else that small, quick.
So you can wrap them in space?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me too.
That has really weird side effects in PvP.
Being able to insta-lock your own drones has weird side effects?
Yeah, because then you can insta-rep your own drones.
Yeah, now I can run like a Nesta with 5 A-type small reppers.
And you can no longer kill my gecko.
Yeah.
Or you really don't want to think about what happens if someone's running an ancillary remote shield booster, of like medium size at least, and just pops their drone up real fast.
That's probably not as good as you're thinking it's going to be perfectly honest. But I will say that ancillary remote shield boosters are actually kind of undervalued right now. I like using them on my small gang cine. But then again, I'm weird.
Those are not really good for logi ships, but for small gangs, definitely.
Yeah.
And the faction in Dead Space large reps and caps. I remember Fozzie mentioning that they were thinking about it. Is that still possibly a thing?
Sorry, can you come again on that one?
Like something about 6 months ago, Fozzie or maybe somebody else said or confirmed or something about that they were looking at or possibly adding faction or Dead Space large remote reps, like remote cap, remote shield, remote armor. Is that still possibly on the roadmap?
Unfortunately, I don't think I'd be allowed to confirm or deny that.
Damn it!
Oh.
I really want to get a 5 billionist Guardian.
Yeah.
You can already do that. Just make the old RNK blue shell fit with the Bailey, like all the storyline mods to be able to fit it with T2 Trimarks. It's like 3.8 bill or something, and then you have slaves on top of that, and it's easy 5 bill. It's really nice. I can like DM you that fit if you want. It's really fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Because
Yeah,
then I
nice.
can go and mess with my FC.
One second, let me open my Bifur up. And I will actually just like straight up give you a fit in the PVE thing. Woo woo woo! This fit is so useful for PVE. 100%.
I will happily fly it as a Logian Incursions.
Yeah, it was the max possible like EHP you could get on a Guardian, basically. If you actually go and watch like RNK's old videos, you'll note that none of their Guardians used to have afterburners fit, and this is how they used to have them fit, from what I understand.
Good fucking god.
It's really nice. It's got like 306k EHP with boosts.
Lol.
But yeah, there's a fun aside for everyone. In fact, this is your thank you for making it through this whole video. All right. Does anyone else have anything else to say on the subject of PVE?
Is exploration a different subject?
You can talk a little bit about exploration. I don't see why not. Ugh.
I'm just wondering if we could, remember the old data chips used to drop and used to have, fractions of information on them. It'd be great if you could combine 3 or 4 of them just to develop a one-shot site, and then the chips would be spent activating it.
Oh, I still have some of those.
I do too.
That's something to think about, I guess. Maybe for a future site or whatever, it could be interesting. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'm going to wrap it up here then. It seems like we're mostly up steam, only about an hour or 20 minutes, but it's been a very good conversation. Thank you all for coming and participating. I appreciate you being politically active.